The world of open source software is incredibly anti-free speech. In fact, it is difficult to imagine a set of organizations that could be more opposed to freedom of speech and free expression than the world of open source and free software. The first instinct of almost every major open source organization or project is to censor anyone or any thought that could be viewed as disagreeing with those in power. Their first instinct in almost every case is to censor, to mute, to delete, to block any and all disagreement. I'm going to walk you through some of this right now because it is indisputable. It is so widespread, it makes me want to throw open my mouth. It's insane. GNOME, the GNOME project, the largest desktop environment on Linux and open source platforms, regularly deletes and censors critical members. In fact, if you go to their forums and you post something that the moderators or the leaders of the GNOME Foundation don't like, it will be promptly deleted and you will be banned. If you are a tech journalist that asks a critical question on one of their forums, you will be banned. If you are me, you will be banned. If you say my name, literally, if you say the name Lunduke, you will get a lifetime ban on any of their forums, chat services, email things, anything. And that includes, and this has been done in practice, this includes core maintainers of GNOME software packages. That's right, this is an official highly censorious policy from the GNOME Foundation. Don't like what they say? Banned. Arch Linux has recently come out as being incredibly in favor of intense levels of censorship. They have been encouraging their platforms to ban links to critical other platforms, such as X or Twitter. They delete and censor regularly any question that is critical. Anyone who opposes the notion that, hey, maybe we shouldn't censor people, deleted. On their forums, in their chat rooms, all over the place. People who mention my name, deleted and banned. In fact, it's gone so far that whenever they have an influx of people questioning and concerning policies within Arch Linux, they lock down their platforms entirely to keep critical users out. Yeah, it's not exactly a free speech haven. NixOS, big Linux distribution project. Well, they ban and punish regularly anyone who is not deemed to be sufficiently leftist. Not a joke. If you are not an extreme leftist, and I'm not talking about your Democrat who's pretty left-leaning in your politics. No. That's far too far to the right for NixOS. You have to be an extreme leftist, and if you're not, you are branded as a Nazi, and they conduct what they call a purge, their words, to get rid of you and ban you from the platform. They even forced out the creator of their project on the same grounds, and they preemptively banned me, even on platforms I didn't exist on. They were so terrified that I might appear and ask a question. Not exactly pro-free speech. openSUSE expels, one of the oldest Linux distributions there is, expels any member who refuses to actively wave the trans flag. It's not a joke. If someone says, hey, maybe we don't need to wave a political flag, maybe we can just be a software project, banned. This happens regularly and has been happening for years there. They ban current members. They ban past board members even. Any who object to waving the trans flag is immediately banned. Any who is suspected of being a bit too conservative or espouses an idea like, let's not be political, banned. And of course, they banned me. It's a running theme here. Linux Mint, one of the big Linux distributions out there. For a time, if you went to the Linux Mint forum and you typed in my name along with a bunch of other words, it automatically changed. And we're not talking swear words here, just words of ideas they don't like. like Lunduke. They automatically changed the name Lunduke to, this is not a joke, violates forum rules in little pointy brackets there. Yeah, so if you said, hey, anyone see Lunduke's newest article? It changed it to, hey, anyone see violates forum rules newest article? Automatically. After they got called out on this repeatedly and loudly, eventually they removed that one bit of censorship. But it goes to show you, even in the Linux Mint community, in every Linux community, it seems like the first instinct is rapid censorship. Censor a lot, censor early, censor often, censor everyone if they disagree. Mastodon and the Fediverse. Now here's an interesting one, because we're not really talking about just one project here. A lot of people run their own Mastodon and Fediverse servers. It's a decentralized, basically Twitter clone, right? But here's the crazy thing about the majority of the large servers on this Fediverse is they engage in frequent banning and defederation of entire servers to intentionally suppress speech. They call this Fediblock. Blocking people from the Fediverse. It is a campaign that has been running for years now, on and off, to specifically with the intention of isolating and censoring large numbers of people. In fact, servers that my user account in the Fediverse has existed on have repeatedly been banned by other servers, thus making it almost impossible for someone who exists on one Fediverse Mastodon server to talk with another server simply because of my existence. Lunduke is mentioned positively, like, ooh, this is an interesting show. Someone posts a link to a Lunduke Journal show. And that entire server, in many cases, will be banned by all of the other major Mastodon and Fediverse servers, including the official ones by the creators of the project. The whole thing is built to censor. It's almost like someone felt like they weren't censoring enough people, so they created a platform that enabled them to censor rapidly increasing amounts of people because they just love censoring so gosh darn much. It seems like the whole point of Mastodon. Now, lest you think this doesn't go all the way to the top, oh boy, does it ever. The Linux kernel regularly bans people. Now, I'm not talking about when the Russian programmers were banned from the Linux kernel, because those are legal issues. I mean, if there's executive orders in place from the President Biden that says there's sanctions against Russia, and the Linux Foundation is forced to comply with those sanctions and ban Russian programmers from their kernel, you know what? Okay, I'm not even going to bring that up. But that's not where they stop. Yeah, if, for instance, one of their longtime developers said, you know what, he disagreed with the banning of Russian programmers. He got banned. He wasn't Russian, he just disagreed with the banning, so he got banned. Another developer, one who developed a file system support inside of Linux, got banned from the Linux kernel, contributing to the Linux kernel, because he really didn't grovel enough. Right? They didn't like his attitude, and they told him that basically he needed to get on his hands and knees and beg, and he didn't do it enough. He did it a little, but not enough, so they banned him. Ban. They ban as fast as they can. It's like a rapid shotgun of banning. And lest you think this is a brand new phenomenon, we're going to go all the way back to 2019 right now, so 6 years ago. The Linux Foundation banned someone from going to their events for tone policing and wearing a red MAGA hat. Yeah, that's right. So they found a guy on social media where a picture of him was wearing one of those red MAGA hats. So they banned him from attending events entirely. So he was not allowed to speak to people at those events because they don't like what he has to say. So banned. The C++ standards group, the ISO standards organization for the programming language C++, banned a longtime decade-plus contributor with many published papers about the C++ language in that group. They banned him from the group because he put the word question in a paper. That's not a joke. That's a real thing that happened. And I verified this every which way from Sunday. That was the exact reason that he was banned. There wasn't another reason. It was simply that he used the word question in a paper. There wasn't anything racist about his paper. It was a paper about, oh gosh, what was it? It was some undefined exception within C++. It was a very technical paper, very boring paper. He was banned for using the word question in it, right? So they saw something and they deleted it. They banned the person instantly. First instinct, ban. Now, the open source initiative. The open source initiative is, in theory, the keeper of what's known as the open source definition, the definition that defines whether or not a specific software license meets the standards of being called open source. They've been around for quite some time. They've been around since the 90s. The two people that founded the open source definition, Bruce Perens and Eric Raymond, have been banned from the open source initiative. They founded it. These two guys founded it. They're no longer allowed to be in it. Not only that, but like in the case of Eric Raymond, he can't even speak on their mailing list. They have banned him in every possible way from simply communicating to people or with people in and around the open source initiative. Why? Because they did not like the things that they said. An organization banned the two people that founded the organization because they did not like their ideas. Because their ideas were the kind of ideas that the foundation was organized around. It's ridiculous. First instinct, ban, censor, always. The Godot game engine. Many of you might remember this was just from a couple of months back. Big, giant open source video game engine. They conducted mass bannings of anyone who either seemed to be conservative or suggested that, hey, maybe a piece of software should focus on being a piece of software and not be political. We don't need to be political. Both groups banned in mass, huge waves of people, banned from source control, banned from social media, banned from chat rooms and forums, banned. First instinct, ban often, ban quickly. Anyone who disagrees with what those in power of that organization says, even a little bit, over and over again. Python, the Python Foundation, the Python programming language, they banned one of their longest time contributors, a contributor that had been around with Python almost as long as Python had existed. They banned this guy from the project because he said, this is not a joke, that he, what was the exact phrase? That he liked Saturday Night Live back in the late 70s. That was his offense. That was the official reason they banned him for. But really, what it was that this particular person that they banned said a lot of things that the people in power did not like, right? He disagreed with some things. He's like, I don't like the way we're voting on this. I don't want to censor and ban a lot of people. He said those sorts of things. So boom, he was banned over and over again. And this is all over the place, and it manifests itself in a million different ways. The folks behind Firefox, Mozilla, they came out and they made a firm statement a couple years back that not only does the Mozilla Foundation and Firefox support heavy-handed censorship of conservatives and Republicans and the like, they made this very clear, that they supported what they called more than deplatforming. So what they came out and said was it's not enough to kick someone off of a platform. It's not enough to ban someone from social media or YouTube or a publishing platform. We have to kick them off the internet entirely. That was the official Mozilla stance. If you're conservative, if you're Republican, if you have political ideas that Mozilla disagrees with, you must not be allowed to have internet access. This was a stated goal of both the Mozilla Foundation and the Mozilla Corporation, the makers of Firefox. Now, what's interesting, and made it by the CEO and executive director. This was not like a random person making an idea. This was their stated goal, was extreme censorship. Now, what's interesting, now they've scrubbed that. I've given them such a hard time about this whole we need more than deplatforming thing that they've finally, just recently, scrubbed that article from their website. They've left a lot of the other articles before and after that, but they scrubbed that one because they realize how awful and horrible they look because of it. So they've kind of shoved that one in the shoebox of mystery. So what we've got here is a huge collection of open source organizations where their very first instinct is extreme levels of censorship. The Linux kernel and Linux Foundation, Arch Linux, openSUSE Linux, NixOS, Linux Mint, Python, C++, Godot, GNOME, the entire Mastodon Fediverse, the Open Source Initiative, Mozilla. And this is just the start. I stopped here because we now have a giant screen filled with examples. But you want to keep digging? More examples could come. I could have open source is anti-free speech part 2, part 3, and part 4 real easy. It would not take a lot of digging. It is very clear that the open source motto, 9 out of 10 open source organizations, their motto might as well be censor early, censor often. It is ridiculous. The level of censorship, the level of hatred of the concept of free expression or free speech is rampant throughout the open source industry, open source organizations, the entire open source and free software, Linux, BSD, etc. worlds is just filled to the brim with extreme censorship. Again, it's hard to imagine. I mean, look at all of the organizations that have been just going crazy, banning people left and right, committing what they call purges of people they disagree with. Almost always for political reasons. Again, note all the examples that we went through today were not people posting a bunch of swear words. They were not people harassing other people. They were people who were, in many cases, simply suspected of having the wrong politics or posting something political on an unrelated, totally different platform, right? So like people will get banned from a mailing list or from being a part of a project or from a source control system because on Facebook, when they were talking with their Aunt Sally, they posted something political, or they're over on Twitter joking around with some friends and they posted a meme that they thought was funny. Well, it was too political, but they don't ban people who are leftist politically. They ban people who are right-leaning or centrist politically. If you're a centrist and you come out and make a political statement, if it runs afoul of those on the extreme left, right, the communists and Marxists and the like, you will very likely potentially get banned. In some of these projects, you will definitely get banned. I mean, shoot, some of these projects have gone into full-on lockdown for fear that I will mention them and someone might criticize them. They hate free speech. Hate. And there is a clear political connection here. Every single one of these organizations, everyone listed on the screen, as well as most open source organizations, are run and administered by people who are on the extreme left, right? Marxists, communists, and very extreme socialists. There is a clear, undeniable correlation between open source organizations run by extreme leftists and open source organizations who are anti-free speech. It's a one-to-one match. It's a perfect match. Every single open source organization that has enacted extremist levels of censorship and blocking and muting any who oppose them is also run by extreme leftists. Not one of the anti-free speech open source organizations that I've mentioned or any other is run by conservatives. Not one, not one. Or people on the far right. Nor are they run by centrists. Nor are they run by people who are left-leaning politically, but just kind of left of center. Nope. They're all extreme leftists. Every single case, without fail. Now, I'm not one to go out and say, oh, correlation equals causation, blah, 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 blah. In this case, it's pretty doggone clear. Every single time it happens. Now, a little over a year ago, I conducted a survey. I surveyed 7,200 people within the tech industry. I do this every couple of years. I do a Lunduke Journal big tech industry survey. And I ask questions all over the map. Tech usage, what operating systems and platforms people use, what politics they have, etc. Well, this last time, one of the questions that I included was a question around online censorship. Right? And because of that, I was able to put together some data that showed that a huge percentage of people, in fact, 43.8% of everyone in the tech industry who identified as left-leaning politically supported actively the total banning of at least one idea from online publishing, meaning almost half of everyone who was left-leaning politically was very supportive of banning ideas from being discussed. Now, this wasn't that ideas shouldn't be discussed or that ideas are wrong, but that ideas should be prohibited from being discussed. Now, I've got a chart up on the screen for those of you watching the video version. So it's roughly 43 some odd % of left-leaning people feel that there is at least one idea out there that they feel like should never be talked about, whether it's climate change or COVID vaccines or 2020 election fraud or 2016 election fraud or January 6th or there are only two genders, etc. Now you'll notice when looking at the chart, as soon as you move to are people centrist politically, that number dropped significantly. People who were centrist were much less likely to be, okay, yeah, we can ban people for speaking, right? Seriously, way below 20%. Move on to right-leaning people, and that number drops to way below 10%, right? There is a very distinct trend. If people are in the tech industry and they are left-leaning politically, they are more likely to actively support the censorship, the complete, total, authoritarian, fascist-style censorship of other people. And people who are centrist or right-leaning are extremely opposed to that same censorship. And you'll note that of the questions I asked, I talked. There are some questions that I brought up in there that are points of view of left-leaning people, right? And people who were on the right don't want to censor those either. Eric Raymond brought something up on X the other day. I want to read part of his post to you because I thought it was insightful. And again, Eric Raymond is one of the guys who founded the open source initiative. He's also the author of a book entitled The Cathedral and the Bazaar, one of the early books about open source software development and methodologies around it. So when it comes to open source software, Eric Raymond is a bit of a legend in this regard. So I just want to read this here. Quote, "One of my regrets about my years of being Mr. Famous Guy when I had maximum leadership leverage is that I didn't foresee the political threat to open source. I thought it was enough to be apolitical, invite everyone to be part of our development community, and that everybody would continue to keep politics out of the coding, including even my own libertarian politics. If I had known what was coming, I would have made a big deal about insisting that the open source community had to have one positive political value: free speech and opposition to censorship. That would have been justified on the object level because we can't function when those political conditions are violated. On the meta level, having that as a positively asserted community value would have made it far more difficult for the Marxists and wokies to do their entryism thing. They would have been recognized as a fundamentally toxic phenomenon sooner, end quote. And he's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. If free speech and the concept of having free expression and an opposition to censorship, an instinctual opposition to censorship is instilled within an organization, well, then all the things we've just talked about today don't happen. Right? People from all different political walks of life can still come together and work on the same project. They can still work on Linux. They can still work on their Linux distribution or their desktop environment or their programming language. They can still do that together. But once you allow in the Marxists, the communists, the extreme left-leaning folks, censorship every time follows. We've seen this. We've seen this over and over and over again. Let's bring up the list again. From Linux to Linux distributions, to desktop environments, programming languages, online platforms, web browsers, on and on and on. As soon as those organizations have reliably taken over by Marxists, the censorship begins. And again, this is just the tip of the iceberg. So what do we do with this? Now, looking backwards is one thing. And Eric Raymond is right. If all of the open source world, the free software world, had clung more intensely to freedom of speech, to an opposition of censorship, this wouldn't be a problem right now. But the problem is here. We have to deal with the problem that's in front of us. So how do we increase the freedom of speech within open source? How do we make it so that you can exist with an open source or free software company, project, organization, foundation again? There's two options. Realistically, there's only two options. The first is that we find a way to convince the extreme leftists within open source that free speech is good. I don't know how we do that. I'm going to be frank with you. I don't know how we do that, because they are constantly, regularly, almost on a daily basis, banning everyone they can who disagrees with them. It is clear that a core part of their worldview is that they should censor everyone else. Centrists, right-leaning people, straight people, white people, censor them, right? That's part of their worldview. So we either have to convince them to give up that worldview and embrace one of freedom of speech, of freedom of expression, of being against, fundamentally, censorship of ideas. Or the second option is we remove leftists from positions of authority within open source organizations. And it's not that we need to remove them because of who they vote for. We don't need to remove someone because, oh, they voted for President Biden. The thing is, the fact is, the cold hard reality is that if an organization is run by extreme leftists, there is a nearly 100% chance that that organization within open source software and the IT industry in general will engage in extreme levels of censorship. Extreme, to the point where they ban people for having a political idea that was expressed somewhere else in the world. Far away from the project, they'll still ban them. Or if people won't willingly go along with extreme political crusades, like what we saw with openSUSE, where they banned people for refusing to wave the trans flag, they'll get banned. And we're seeing this over and over again, and it's not slowing down. Right? I mean, just this last week, for those of you following the news, we saw more Linux distributions and open source projects come out and just start mass banning people, going into lockdown to avoid people speaking their mind. Oh God, we couldn't have that. So our only two options are convince them that free speech is good or remove them from positions of authority. Those are really the two options we've got. Now, there's a lot of ways we can remove those individuals who oppose free speech so violently from positions of authority within open source. We can either get everyone out of those organizations and create new organizations without them, or we can find ways to push them out or convince them to leave of the existing organizations. There's multiple options there. But the goal has to be fundamentally the same. Get to a point where those people who are extreme leftists are not in positions of authority. Because again, the open source organizations which are run, and this includes IT companies, foundations, and the like, and there's not a lot of them. There's not a lot of them. But the few that do exist that are run by centrists or right-leaning political people do not engage in this level of anti-free speech, pro-censorious, heavy-handed blocking activity. They don't do it at all. Not one example. Not ever. So for me, even if let's say I'm a Democrat in the United States and I'm a little left of center politically, I would rather have someone who is an extreme right-leaning person in charge and administering a project, because it means I'm less likely to get censored and blocked and banned than if, well, the Marxists are in charge. So this isn't a rallying cry for conservatives to band together against the leftists. No. People who are left of center and centrists and right of center and even extreme rights, the whole political spectrum, we all should be bound together on this one, because all of us are impacted. Now, granted, if you're right of center, you're impacted the most because the people who are Marxists hate that group the most, but it really impacts all of us. The Lunduke Journal covers these topics because they have to be covered. I love computing. I love the history of computing. I love modern computing and retro computing. I love all of it. I identify as a computer nerd. I mean, that's part of my childhood. That's part of my adulthood. That's just part of who I am. And these people are doing everything they can to strip the joy of computing away, to take the ability for all of us to come together as nerds, regardless of our political ideals, and hang out together and nerd out about the nerdiness and build software together and build online services together and just have a great time together. They're working hard to take that away from us, to take away the thing that brings us together, that unites us as nerds. The hell with that. And so the Lunduke Journal covers all of these censorious, awful jerks, because they are jerks, and shines a light on them. It shows the world who they really are. And we're nowhere near done. Oh Lord, we are nowhere near done. Thank you to all of the subscribers to the Lunduke Journal who helped to make this reporting possible. Because honestly, if I were taking money from big tech right now, I'd be out of a job. I'd be back submitting resumes and trying to get a job somewhere, because they would shut the Lunduke Journal down. They'd pull all their funding in a heartbeat. But because I don't take a single dime from big tech, from any software company, from any computer company, no one sponsors the Lunduke Journal shows. It is supported entirely from subscribers, from people like you. And because of that, I'm community funded. I'm the only major tech news outlet, certainly operating in the open sourcey world, that is like that. The only one. And thank you for making that possible. It wouldn't be possible without you. I couldn't cover these topics without you. Notice no other tech news outlets touching these topics. They stay clear of them with a 10-foot pole. They treat these topics like they're radioactive. Most of the time, because those tech news outlets disagree with me. They like the censorship. They like the Marxist-led organizations. They like that. It's worth thinking about. So again, lunduke.com, click on some links. You'll love links very much. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nerds and nerdettes, across this glorious inner tube of ours, I do declare, end broadcast.